So, it is officially October, which means it's a spooky month! And for this spooky month, I wanted to make a mask. A Michael Myers mask. Now, most people would go to Spirit Halloween and pick up the mask they had there, but I decided to take the harder route and make it all from scratch. I'm sure it will turn out great. Hopefully. So instead of using latex or paper mache, I decided to go the EVA foam route. So I made a basic structure that would keep it all together so that whenever I tug on it, it wouldn't break. I hot glued all the straps together and it held on nicely. And here is the completed base. It does look a little big on my mannequin head, but I think it turned out a-okay. So my next step was to cover it all with the one layer of EVA foam. So I started with the top of my head, shaped it with tinfoil, and I cut the pieces out onto EVA foam. Wanted to make sure I got a good enough shape for the top of the head. Then took a bendable wire and I made his nose. This will give it more shape and give it just a little bit more structure. Then it was covering up the rest of the mask, so I cut 2 squares to cover up the face and moved on to the chin. And then cut the excess off. Then moved on to the lower part of the chin. Finally, to glue on a piece of the neck. I highly recommend making a base because gluing on the pieces to the base made it probably a lot more easier than just gluing all the pieces together. Finally, it was to the back of the head, of which I cut out 2 rectangles and I slapped those bad boys on there. And that was it. He kind of appeared a little more cylinder than I imagined. Not really a mask, but it made it very sturdy, which was good. So I obviously didn't want him to stay a cylinder, so I began to add shape to him. So I began with the forehead. I applied one piece and then applied the other with some simple hot glue, which hot glue sticks onto EVA foam really easily. After that was done, I decided to move on to the nose. I cut out 4 squares and I shaped them, which kind of gave the shape of nostrils. For his iconic cheekbones, I took 2 pieces of EVA foam and I smacked them right on there. Made sure to position them correctly. Then finally onto his luscious lips, which I cut it out of EVA foam and glued them on. Finally to the scary part, which is cutting the eyes. So I wanted to make sure I had the right shape, so I marked it with a pencil, then cut it with an X-Acto knife. I was kind of scared to do this because I didn't really want to mess up the eyes, because the eyes have to be spot on a Michael Myers mask. So I had to get that correct almond or football shape that I wanted. So I slowly and meticulously went through it, and in the end I think I got a good enough result that I was happy with. I can already see the Michael Myers face peering through. However, there is a lot of hot glue lines which I need to fix. So to cover those glue lines, I busted out the good old Kwik Seal and I rubbed some on my thumb and I made sure to get into all the cracks and crevices, which over time, as I added more layers, it made it so much more smoother, even though it doesn't really look that smooth right now. I also forgot to add eyebrows, so I quickly did that. And then finally, to smoothen it even more, I grabbed my Dremel and I dremeled the heck out of this thing. I really wanted to make sure that it was smooth, and I did my best that I could. So, yeah. I then sanded it down, heavily sanded it. Again, wanted to make it smooth as I possibly could. And also I made sure to clean up my area since I kind of made a mess in my garage. So after that, I think it looks pretty good. I also randomly ripped off a piece of the base. Kind of got in the way of me putting on the mask. Just kind of ripping it out left a hole, which was easily patched by some Kwik Seal. Another thing I forgot to add before the Kwik Seal was the ears. Took basic cubes and I etched in the design I wanted, and then cut said cubes out and made it into a ear shape. Then picked at it with an X-Acto knife. Then used the good old Dremel to make it more smoother. Kind of came out a little shriveled than I wanted to, but I mean, nobody pays attention to the ears when they look at a mask. So I glued on the said ears to the mask. Then I took the good old Kwik Seal and I made it even smoother. After it was all smooth, I headed back outside and I ripped out the good old Plasti dip, sprayed on about a couple layers, about 2 to 3, and then I fanned it to make it dry until my wrist hurt, and I let it dry. While it was drying, I went to the good old Joann Fabrics and bought some supplies, just a few supplies for it. It was mainly paint that I bought. Wanted to get that skin tone, so I bought this pale, almost peach color. Then I took some brown color and I mixed the two together. It took a while for them to get the right color I wanted, so I had to add paint, even more paint, till it looked about flesh tone enough. I then took a big brush and I painted on about 1 to 2 layers. I also got some paint on my tripod. Wanted to make sure that I had that Captain Kirk skin tone like the original mask. However, it still didn't look as smooth as I wanted. So I took some Kwik Seal and I applied even more, specifically on the forehead as well as the cheekbones. I then painted over it, which made it look a little better. I then took some white paint that I got at Joann's and I got a good amount of it. So for applying the white, I took a paintbrush and I would pat it down, basically dry brushing the white on, since I didn't really want it to be all pale white, since I still wanted to keep that flesh tone, and it looked pretty good at the end. Now before I wanted to finish painting it, I wanted to see what the hair looked on it, so I took a basic wig and I literally tore it and cut it apart. I then etched out where I wanted the hairlines to be. So I took some Tacky Glue that I got from Joann's. Literally everything here is from Joann's. Got some gloves, spoon. So I would glue on a line. I would take the hair. I would press it in as good as I can, making sure that it would stick. Then took the plastic spoon to press it even more. So I did this with almost all of the hairlines. To be honest, I thought that I envisioned Tacky Glue would work better, since I had seen it in most of the tutorial videos on how to make hair a Michael Myers mask. But it kind of, as you can see, would kind of slip. Maybe because like it works better with latex. But I still kept at it, and it still after a while it would dry and it would remain on. And I glued it all on. And it was a mountain of hair. Like, it was legit crazy with how long. I did not expect it to be that long, so I obviously gave him a haircut. Snipped off a good amount of the hair, which, just like the fur in my King video, left a huge mess all over my workplace. Other than that though, I was pretty happy with it, since I thought it looked really good, at least a lot better than what was before. So, and that was it. So after his gorgeous hair was glued on, I decided to move to the neck, since it kind of gave a Halloween 5 look. So I cut almost a good amount of the neck off, which as you can see left a lot of pieces. But I still wasn't happy with it, so I decided to cut even more. Just left even more pieces. But I think I found a good length of the neck, since it didn't go down too much. So I think it looked good. After that, it was back to the face. I noticed that it still was pretty rough So I sanded it down even more. That's probably like, what, the 5th time I probably sanded it. So yeah, I wanted to make sure it got smooth as much as I could. In the end, it kind of dirtied it up a bit, but I think it did smoothen out. Almost gave it a Rob Zombie kind of look to it, which I wasn't going for. So I obviously painted it over, so I think it looked a lot more smoother. And while I was at it, I trimmed up his hair a bit, and instead of using the Tacky Glue, I just straight up went to hot glue since it really wasn't working. So I wanted to make sure the hair was all slicked back and pulled back, which looked good. Then for this sewing needle hole from the first movie, took a standard tool and just punctured a hole in there. I then etched the puncture hole into a cross. I like to mark all my masks with a cross because Jesus, he's a super cool dude. And then finally back to paint. I know it's been a while since I painted in this video, so I decided to give it even more of a flesh tone. So I basically redid or repainted the whole thing, which kind of gave him a bit of a tan. So I took more of the white, or I went to the more paler side, and I would pat it down to rub it off. Really wanted to make sure I still had that flesh tone appearance, specifically on the neck. So yeah, I would dry brush it with white, and I think that looked pretty good so far. Peace. Then took some white and I dry brushed it on, which made it a little bit more of the fish belly, the white I wanted to go to. Then took some black paint and I dry brushed specifically around the eyes, around the cheekbones, as well as in the lips, which definitely dirtied it up and gave it more of a grunge, almost like a Halloween 2 look. And then I kind of noticed that I wanted to cover up the eyes, so I took some mesh and I glued it to the inside, since almost in every Michael Myers mask you never want to see his eyes, which made it look a lot better. So I kind of had a bit of an OCD and I really wasn't happy with the way his lips looked, so I decided randomly to cut off just a little bit of his lip. While making this mask, I kind of just did stuff on the go mainly. Didn't really have any structure. I just mainly like thought of did I like how it looked, and if I didn't, I would change it. No matter how close I was to finishing it, I wanted to make it look as good as I could. So yeah, you can see me doing here with the lips. Wanted to smoothen them up. The cut on his lips kind of gave him almost a happy face, so I obviously wanted to get rid of that. So I busted out the good old Kwik Seal and I rubbed it all over. I wanted to make sure I covered all of the exposed EVA foam before I put on any paint. So once it was all covered with Kwik Seal, I took the pale white paint and I painted over it. I also made sure to dirty it up, and that was it. And that is the completed product. I legit am surprised that this went better than I thought it would be, and that the mask actually looks like a Michael Myers mask. I legit was scared to attempt this mask because I thought I was gonna mess it up very, very badly and make something terrible looking, but I am legit stoked with what I was able to come up with. I didn't really focus on doing one specific mask from the movies. I mainly just wanted to get the general look. It has some elements of Halloween 1, as well as Halloween 2, and Halloween 5 and 6. But I think it's great overall.